Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. On behalf of the university leadership, I'm very pleased to welcome a remarkable leader to our campus this evening. Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. Secretary Haaland joins us to discuss the pressing issues of this moment: climate crisis and environmental justice. We cannot, however, address impacts to land and the environment without acknowledging the land itself, and specifically the land on which we find ourselves this evening. The University of Michigan is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. We acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal lands and the painful history experienced by Native communities that facilitated the establishment of this university. We affirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabe ties to this land, the profound contributions of Native Americans to this institution, and the university's commitment to educate the children of Native ancestors. The university seeks to live up to this commitment, not only through its participation in the Okanagan Charter and its honoring Article 16 DEI 2.0 Central Action Item, but also through its dedication to environmental issues and collaboration with the Native American and Indigenous partners. Through the university's Mathi Botanical Gardens, we are partnering with the College of Menominee Nation to become a hub of the National Science Foundation Center for Braiding Indigenous Knowledges and Science. This initiative weaves Native American and Indigenous knowledge systems with Western approaches to science. And our School for Environment and Sustainability, affectionately known as SEAS, will be hosting SEAS Advancing Indigenous Land Rights and Stewardship in the U.S. on March 30th. Tonight's conversation highlights this critically important time for our planet and our future. Secretary Haaland is tackling this moment head-on. Through her leadership, the Department of the Interior is addressing the climate crisis at the scale and speed this urgent challenge demands. And they are doing it by centering environmental justice and empowering communities with the tools and resources they need to protect our shared planet for generations to come. At the University of Michigan, we echo this commitment to environmental justice and climate action. As a society and a university, we are rising to the challenge during one of the most transformative moments of our time, and we must implement solutions that benefit everyone. From advancing climate education to spurring our university-wide push toward carbon neutrality, students, faculty, and staff are contributing their energies toward a more sustainable campus and a better world. Universities can serve as testing grounds for global solutions, and we're committed to leveraging our campus as a living learning lab. This is a defining element of our strategic vision, our Vision 2034, but it's not a new priority. For more than 30 years, environmental justice has been at our core. U of M School for Environment and Sustainability was the first school in the nation to offer environmental justice as an academic field of study. And U of M remains at the forefront of educating leaders who make real impacts across the spectrum of environmental justice challenges. In partnership partnership with communities through the region and the world, U of M expands from a wide range of disciplines in pursuing inclusive, responsive, and equitable solutions to real-world problems. And let me underscore that word, partnership. We share Secretary Haaland's commitment to bringing local communities, environmental groups, Native Americans, and Indigenous knowledge and young people to the decision-making table. Many of you in the room are important partners in advancing this work, and for that I thank you. It takes working across boundaries to get this important work done. And tonight I'd like to acknowledge the faculty and staff who have partnered to make this event possible. Our gratitude goes to the School for Environment and Sustainability, Democracy and Debate, Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy, the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, the Native American Studies Program, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Rackham Graduate School for modeling close collaboration and for your efforts in bringing our event with Secretary Haaland together this evening. And now I'd like to invite Jasmine Niash to the stage to introduce our guest of honor. Jasmine is a member of the Bear Clan Menominee Nation. She's a dual degree student pursuing a master's degree in the Environmental Justice Program at the School for Environment and Sustainability, as well as a Juris Doctorate at Michigan Law School. Impressive. She serves as the Area 4 Representative and Advocacy Chair for the National Native American Law Students Association, as well as Vice President of the local NAL-SA chapter. Jasmine has earned degrees in natural resources and public administration from the College of Menominee Nation. Please join me in welcoming Jasmine Niash.
Matro-Wanan. Thank you, Provost Macaulay. Tonight's special guest is a woman who needs no introduction, but I'm going to humbly attempt one anyway. Throughout her career in public service, Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland has broken many barriers and opened the doors of opportunity for future generations. She first made history when she became the first Native American to serve as Cabinet Secretary. She's a member of the Pueblo of Laguna and a 35th generation New Mexican. Secretary Haaland grew up in a military family. Her father was a 30-year combat Marine, and her mother was a Navy veteran who served as a federal employee for 25 years at the Bureau of Indian Affairs. As a military child, she attended 13 public schools before graduating from Highland High School in Albuquerque. As a single mother, Secretary Haaland volunteered at her child's preschool to afford early childhood education. Like many single parents, she had to rely on food stamps at times, lived paycheck to paycheck, and struggled to put herself through college. At the age of 28, Haaland enrolled at the University of New Mexico, otherwise known as UNM, where she earned a bachelor's degree in English and later earned her JD from UNM Law School. Secretary Haaland and her child, who also graduated from the University of Mexico, are still paying off their student loans. Secretary Haaland ran her own small business producing and canning Pueblo salsa, served as a tribal administrator at San Felipe Pueblo, and became the first woman elected to the Laguna Development Corporation Board of Directors, overseeing business operations of the second largest tribal gaming enterprise in New Mexico. After running for New Mexico Lieutenant Governor in 2014, Secretary Haaland became the first Native American woman to be elected to lead a state party. She is one of the first Native American women to serve in Congress. While in Congress, she focused on environmental justice, climate change, missing and murdered Indigenous women, and family-friendly policies. But even with this incredible list of achievements, I would be remiss if I did not mention one other. That through this work, and with unassailable grace and kindness, Secretary Haaland has opened up a realm of possibility once unthinkable for every generation that will come after her. From the inner-city communities in Albuquerque and Chicago, to the reservation schools at Pine Ridge and Menominee, the young people from marginalized communities have undeniable proof that they can do anything that they set their minds to. And it's through their vision, their dreams, and their hope that we know a better world is possible. I know I speak for many other students in this room when I say that Secretary Haaland is truly an inspiration to us all, and we are so honored to have her here tonight. So please join me in welcoming to the stage U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jasmine, and thank you everyone for being so kind.
Sorry for the interruption. I don't mean to disturb anybody, but the youth are not being listened to about this climate crisis. In Michigan, Line 5 has had detrimental effects to the Great Lakes ecosystem, and it is causing the livelihood, the health, and the drinking water of millions of people to be affected. The Biden administration can, in fact, stop this. Secretary Deb Haaland, do you call upon Biden to revoke the presidential permit that is encouraging and enabling Line 5 to continue?
I really appreciate your voice. I see you, I hear you. I have some remarks that I would like to get through, and then we're actually going to sit down and have a conversation with some students. So I would encourage you to, if you can wait, you'll be able to hear the questions that they ask me.
Is it yes? Do you call upon Biden?
I really appreciate your voice. Does everyone want me to read my remarks? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, University of Michigan. Guwatsi haupa, duhiname etsatiwitsa shuimihanu. My name is Deb Haaland. I'm of the Turquoise Clan from Laguna Pueblo. And I see some friends here in the audience. I see some... I see some friends here in the audience, and I am happy to be with all of you. I see in particular a dear friend and former colleague of mine, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Provost McCauley and Jasmine, for those opening remarks. I am grateful that students have such amazing leaders to look up to. I'm so thrilled to be here with this passionate crowd because it means I'm surrounded by folks who care about the climate crisis and protecting our planet as much as we do. It's also an honor to be here in Michigan. Again, I've been here many times before, a state that is leading our country in historic climate action. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. So even before I became Secretary of the Interior, I considered myself to be a bit climate obsessed. What I mean is, I was that person. The person who brought my own bags to the grocery store, who made recycled cardboard signs for climate protests, and who made sure my family and friends brought their own refillable water bottles everywhere they went. And I even have a compost pile at home. Years later, I'm still that person, and my team at Interior will be the first to agree. This dedication to our environment and to protecting our planet by changing our habits and the way we think about the gifts that this earth gives us every single day, these are the values that I've carried with me for a very long time. They're the enduring lessons my grandparents and parents passed down to me and my siblings. Growing up on the high desert mesas in New Mexico, I hauled water with my cousins so my grandmother could cook in her kitchen and so we could wash the dishes and even ourselves. My grandmother would not waste a single drop of water, not only because of the care it took to bring the water to the house, but also because she was teaching us how precious water is. These values are intrinsic to how I view the world. They shape my actions as secretary and the way I view what environmental justice means to me. Even though we strive to live the lives that respect the earth and its ecosystems, we know that individual actions alone won't solve the existential threats that our world faces. Everyone in this room understands these simple truths. The climate crisis is real, it is happening now, and it's uprooting lives across our planet. Right here in our country and around the world, vulnerable communities grapple daily with the very tangible impacts of a warming planet. Years of record-breaking extreme weather jeopardize crops, water supplies, and entire regions of our country, like the American West and communities up and down the East Coast. Devastating pollution wreaks havoc on communities and ecosystems alike. And the disappearance of precious wildlife leaves us questioning which species will survive in the generations to come. All of this contributes to fears and anxieties about whether our children or their children will grow up in a world that resembles the one we're fighting to protect right now. I feel this. I know you do too. It's this shared reality that keeps me up at night. But it's the passionate students and community members in this room and the historic progress made possible by President Biden's Investing in America agenda that inspires me and gives me the hope to keep going. At the very top of our priority list is the sustainable transition of our country's energy future toward one grounded in clean, renewable energy. We've pursued this since day one of the administration, and I'm deeply proud that the Department of the Interior has played a leading role in ushering in a clean energy future. The previous administration did everything they could to hobble our department's clean energy programs, bringing onshore and offshore efforts to a literal halt. But we are making up for lost time. As we focus on this urgent and overdue transition to a better future, we're supercharging our efforts. We're doing this through the approval of dozens of new renewable energy projects on our nation's public lands that are bringing affordable, clean energy to millions of households. These projects, from solar to geothermal to new transmission lines, stretch from California to Arizona to Wyoming, with many more under review. Using the power of our ocean, we're building an entirely new offshore wind industry. To date, we have approved the nation's first 7 offshore wind energy projects, with more on the way in the coming months. In fact, today, we announced approval of our 7th project, Sunrise Wind. This project off the coast of New York will generate enough clean energy to power up to 320,000 homes. Already, communities are reaping the benefits of this new industry. Earlier this month, we celebrated the newly completed South Fork Wind Project off the coast of New York, the first commercial-scale offshore wind project completed in our nation's history. And to get this historic, okay, thank you. And to get this historic work accomplished with everyone at the table, we're fundamentally changing how we work with states, tribal nations, and the labor community. It's important for us to connect early and often with the communities whose lives we want to positively affect. This is part of our commitment to environmental justice. By the time each of you joins the workforce, I'm talking to the students now, our efforts will have created thousands of new opportunities, from engineering to environmental science to stakeholder engagement. I can't wait to see what your generation does with these new opportunities in a clean energy economy. Our department has made historic, momentous progress in a very short time, and I'm proud that we're on track to achieve President Biden's clean energy goals on time. We're also aggressively addressing many of the legacy challenges that communities nationwide grapple with daily, because every community deserves clean air, drinkable water, and a livable future, right? This work is grounded in a deep understanding that if we are to build an equitable future, we must place environmental justice front and center. That includes meeting people where they are and ensuring that historically marginalized communities are given a seat at the table in how programs are implemented and where resources are spent. One of the efforts near and dear to my heart is our unwavering commitment to addressing legacy pollution. Even in 2024, relics of extractive industries like abandoned coal mines and orphaned oil and gas wells leach toxic fumes and contaminants that poison surrounding landscapes and, in turn, harm the people and wildlife that rely on those places every single day. This is personal to me. On the Pueblo of Laguna, where I'm from in New Mexico, our community continues to feel the devastating consequences of the Jackpile mine, once the world's largest open-pit uranium mine in the world. Likewise, the stories I've heard of children having to attend school in methane-clouded communities with tissues stuffed up their bloody noses have moved me to do our work swiftly and with purpose. Legacy pollution stories abound because environmental injustice persists across our country, disproportionately hurting poor people and people of color. Fueling our response to the injustices is $16 billion from the President's bipartisan infrastructure law, going directly toward addressing legacy pollution in our country. Our teams across the department are hard at work to deliver this money to states and tribes so that we can make our communities safe for children and transition toward a more sustainable future while growing economies with good-paying jobs. Just this morning, I joined state labor and community leaders to announce nearly $6 million in funding to plug and clean up orphaned wells right here in Michigan. Thrilled, yeah. I'm so thrilled to see the kind of difference this funding will make for your communities. We're also tackling other difficult challenges head-on, like devastating drought conditions currently gripping the western United States. No region is more familiar with this crisis than the 40 million people who depend on the Colorado River Basin for agriculture, drinking water, and hydropower. In recent years, due to the pressures of historic drought and extreme climate change, the basin has experienced its lowest levels ever. And by low, I mean that without urgent science-informed action, the 2 reservoirs within the Colorado River would have dropped low enough to threaten reliable water deliveries for cities and farms across the West. People doubted that the federal government could work with 7 states and 30 tribes to build consensus around conservation of the Colorado River Basin, and yet over the last 2 years, our amazing team worked tirelessly to find consensus on how to conserve water. I'm proud to say that our efforts paid off. Earlier this month, we announced that as a result of this unprecedented level of collaboration across the basin, we have staved off the immediate collapse of this precious resource. This feat is owed entirely to President Biden's Investing in America agenda and the historic resources we deploy to save 3 million acre-feet of water over the next few years. That's 978 billion gallons of water, if you can imagine that, of water that we've saved, helping to ensure the short-term stability of the Colorado River. This milestone has given us the breathing room to think strategically about the long-term sustainability of the Colorado River, and we are working day in and day out to ensure that even if drought conditions persist for years to come, we are prepared to protect Western communities and ecosystems. We're also directing essential resources and department-wide collaboration toward an issue that our country has become all too familiar with: devastating wildfires, also aggravated by extreme heat and drought. What was once a seasonal part of life for the American West has now become a near year-round threat, no longer isolated to just one part of our country. Last year, millions of people experienced the impacts of wildfire smoke, including right here in Michigan, a stark reminder that the safety and security of our communities is intertwined. Thankfully, historic funding from the President's Investing in America agenda is reorienting how we navigate and prepare for extreme wildfires. Over 5 years, our department is investing $1.5 billion to support our federal wildland and firefighting workforce and increase the resiliency of communities and lands facing the threat of wildfires. These are just some of the ways our administration is tackling the climate crisis with the urgency it demands. I'm so proud of our accomplishments to date, but we know that more needs to be done. In fact, the way our organizations function can also be part of the climate solution, both at the Department of the Interior and right here in Michigan, because it's abundantly clear that even as we transition toward a sustainable future, adaptation and resilience must continue to be core pillars of our collective climate response. Last year, we announced the first ever effort to factor the climate crisis into all operations at the department. A suite of new policies will strengthen and enhance mission-critical decisions and activities. These include updated policies that integrate priorities like adaptive management, Indigenous knowledge, and climate adaptation directly into the DNA of how the department works and how our decisions are made. Indigenous knowledge is a deep understanding of the land and wildlife incurred over millennia and a most essential strategy to tackle the climate crisis. As we better incorporate it into our work, we ensure that tribal voices and the knowledge of the science they hold are front and center in our efforts. By making sure climate impacts are prioritized, we can ensure that the actions we take today will endure. These new policies are a testament to our commitment since day one that now is not the time for business as usual. Last year, I issued a Secretary's order to phase out the sale of single-use plastics on interior managed lands by 2032. Our bureaus are implementing strategies to both phase out single-use plastic products such as plastic bottles and bags, and to implement improvements like the installation of water bottle filling stations across interior managed lands. This means that when you visit your favorite national park or national wildlife refuge, you'll soon find water stations that make it easier to enjoy these stunning places responsibly. So you see, my personal commitments, after all, to protecting our environment can play a role in our department and in national policy. When we see nature as our ally and really act like nature is our ally, we can accomplish tremendous progress for our climate, our planet, and the communities that depend on these natural spaces to thrive every day. That's why we have prioritized nature-based solutions as a foundational part of the department's climate action. At Interior, we're leveraging an extraordinary $2 billion in funding from the President's Investing in America agenda to advance collaborative, community-led ecosystem restoration across our country. That agenda is putting resources where they can make the largest difference by grounding specific keystone initiatives with landscape-level significance. The framework will supercharge our efforts to foster biodiversity and restore the habitats that mean so much to us. The American bison once numbered 60 million in North America, with the population anchored in what is now the central United States. By 1889, only a few hundred wild bison remained, nearly driven to extinction through extermination and a U.S. policy of eradication tied to Native American tribes. Today, thanks to individual Native American intervention, members of the once great bison herds were given refuge. And combined with diligent conservation efforts, these numbers are rebounding, but more work is needed. Our Grassland Keystone Initiative brings the protection of this grand ecosystem in partnership with the indigenous communities who know it best to the forefront of our country's conservation efforts. Expansive restoration progress is also taking place across habitat iconic to the American West, the sagebrush steppe ecosystem. Spanning over 175 million acres, sagebrush country contains biological, cultural, and economic resources of national significance. It is home to more than 350 species across the West, including pronghorn, elk, mule deer, and the greater sage grouse, the magnificent greater sage grouse. America's sagebrush ecosystem is the largest contiguous ecotype in the United States, comprising 1/3 of the landmass over the lower 48 states. But in the last 20 years, half of this area has been lost due to climate change and habitat destruction. Our Sagebrush Keystone Initiative combines community-led conservation with federal partnership to defend and grow the core for future generations to steward. For decades, scientists have sounded the alarm on growing threats like invasive species, extreme drought, and destructive wildland fires, each of which endanger native seed supplies and make restoration efforts all the more difficult, just as we need them most. Our National Seed Strategy Keystone Initiative will help us put the right seeds at the right time in the right place nationwide, including right here in Michigan. These initiatives are sweeping and expansive by design, but at the heart of the framework is collaboration, because we aren't going to get anywhere meaningful if we don't bring every single community and partner to the table. This sentiment is what drives President Biden's America the Beautiful initiative, which set the nation's first ever goal to conserve and restore 30% of U.S. lands and waters by 2030. The 10-year, locally led, nationally scaled initiative lifts up efforts to protect, conserve, connect, and restore the lands, waters, and wildlife upon which we all depend. In his first 2 years in office, President Biden invested more dollars in conservation than any other president in a 2-year period, and he is on track to conserve more lands and waters than any president in history. The impact that these decisions will have on communities, ecosystems, and treasured natural spaces for decades to come is hard to understate because they represent successes that have been decades in the making. thanks to the conservation heroes who have come before us. And in this room are the conservation heroes of our future. You can give yourselves a hand now. As our next generation of climate and conservation stewards step into positions of influence, we must prepare them, prepare you with the tools you need to thrive. President Biden has heard loud and clear the strong desire by young people to engage in the work to help tackle the climate crisis head on. And that's why last year he launched the American Climate Corps and challenged all of us in his cabinet to think about how we can create good-paying jobs that restore our lands and waters, transition our nation to a clean energy future we need, and build resilient communities. It's an exciting challenge, and one that, of course, we're all up to. I often say that getting young people in touch with nature early and often is the key to building long-term, sustainable, and meaningful relationships between them, their communities, and their surroundings. As a child, I inherited a deep respect for the natural world, mostly from my dad, whose example encouraged me to honor each and every outdoor experience. The career staff that I work with at Interior wake up every single day with that sense of dedication, and some have been doing it for decades and decades. It's truly an honor to steward our public lands. And that's why we're working to engage young people from all zip codes and all walks of life to be out on our public lands. One such opportunity exists through the Indian Youth Service Corps. Through the Corps, our department provides meaningful education, employment, and training opportunities to Indigenous youth through conservation projects on public and tribal lands. To date, we have launched over 50 projects through the program across our bureaus. And we're supercharging this and youth programs across the department with a new $15 million commitment, thanks again to President Biden's Investing in America agenda. So here's my challenge to you. 20 minutes ago or so, I told you I was optimistic about our climate's future. I'm optimistic because we have the tools, the resources, and the passion to make our future what it should be. But we also need young folks on the ground, in the federal government, even in the Department of the Interior, leading the way and using the resources that our historic Investing in America agenda has made possible. The work that needs doing won't get finished on its own, and we need your leadership, whether that's as an American Climate Corps member, as a scientist at the department, or a leader within one of our partners across the country, to bring all of it to life. This fight and this mission are truly on all of us. It can't fall on one federal agency, one community, or one person. We must, all of us, everyone, bring all of us into the fold if we are to build a future that is truly equitable and serves each of us. We're in the fight of our lifetime, and I'm so deeply honored to be in it alongside each of you. Thank you all so much for having me here today. Know that the department is your partner in achieving the future we know is entirely possible. Thank you all so much again. And with that, I think we're transitioning to some question and answers. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
I'm so thrilled that you're here, Secretary Haaland. Thank you and welcome again. My name is Kyle White. I'm George Willis Pack Professor at the School for Environment and Sustainability here at Michigan. I'm also University Diversity and Social Transformation Professor. I currently serve on the White House Advisory Council for Environmental Justice. I'm a U.S. Science Envoy, and I'm a member of the Indigenous Leaders Program of the Christensen Fund. I'm an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. Also excited that some distinguished members of our student body here at Michigan have prepared questions for the Secretary, and I'd like to moderate the questions that the students have prepared. So I'd like to turn to the first student, Mahalina Dimakali from the School for Environment and Sustainability.
Kumusta po? Thank you for being with us today. My name is Mahalina Dimakali. I am a senior in the program in the environment, curator of Rooting Reciprocity and All My Relations, 2 art shows centering Indigenous relationship with the water and land. And I am a friend of the Native American Student Association, who recommended the question that I'm asking today. Here in Michigan, all of us, but particularly Native people, are being threatened today and in the future by a pipeline whose permit has expired. What can the federal government do to support the tribes and the state in their fight against Line 5?
Thank you so much for your question. And what I'll say first is, as you were asking me the question, I was thinking about my journey to Standing Rock, to stand with the water protectors, when that was the fight of our lives at that time. And I understand water is life. We can't do anything without that. And I know that stopping Line 5, it could never happen fast enough for anyone. But I want to assure you that the tribes are at the table. There's an international component there at the table. The lawyers in the federal government are at the table, including my amazing lawyers at the Department of the Interior, who are also Native American and who also have a stake in these important issues. They are all at the table talking, finding a way to make it happen faster. And so I know that all these commitments have to be balanced, and that's what they're working on. I encourage you to keep speaking out. Your voice is incredibly important. It's important to make sure that the administration knows how you feel about this. But I just want you to know that I care deeply about this issue, and we are working as fast as we can from our end to make sure that it does move forward in an expeditious manner. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Mahalina. Our next esteemed student colleague is Tara Apo from the School for Environment and Sustainability.
Aloha, Secretary Haaland. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Tara Apo. I am Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiian from the island of Maui, and I am a graduate student in the School for Environment and Sustainability, specializing in environmental justice. In Hawaii, biocultural restoration means restoring entire watersheds from the mountain to the sea, as well as traditional relationships to land that are rooted in kinship and reciprocity. And Native Hawaiians should be compensated for restoring the abundance that our ancestors designed into our landscapes and seascapes. My question then is, how can DOI open funding pathways for Indigenous peoples, in my case Native Hawaiians, to restore whole ecosystems on our own terms?
Aloha, thank you so much for being here, and it's an honor for me to hear your question. I traveled to Hawaii, and I had opportunities to see the Native communities in action, protecting their forest birds, rebuilding ancient, 800-year-old fish ponds that were amazing ecosystems in and of themselves for the communities. I was really saddened to hear that a lot of those fish ponds were actually destroyed for the tourist industry. So we are in full support of Native Hawaiians stewarding those lands and making sure that they have these lands to pass on to future generations. You know, I was also thinking about an opportunity I had. My first trip to Alaska, we went to Uktiagvik. It's the highest point in the United States, the most northern point in the United States, and it's in Alaska, and had an opportunity to meet. We had a tribal roundtable, and some whaling captains were at this table and talking to me about their science. They don't trust the science of the scientists, right? The folks who went to college and got their degrees and studied for their PhDs and so forth, they have lived it in and day out, quite frankly, and feel very confident about their ability and their own data. Indigenous knowledge is science. It's hard science. So I want you to know that we are completely supporting the Native Hawaiian programs that have given rise to the co-stewardship, essentially. And I agree wholeheartedly that science we have to listen to. We'll continue to absolutely be in touch, communicate with those folks, and certainly if you have any ideas, our door is open, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you, Tara, and we appreciate your responses, Secretary Haaland. Our next esteemed colleague is Tyler Baird from the Ford School.
Hello, Secretary Haaland. My name is Tyler Baird. I'm a second-year dual degree student with the Ford School and the School for Environment and Sustainability. I'm studying state and federal level policies and politics around climate change, adaptation, and resilience, with a special interest in equity and justice here in the Great Lakes region. Thanks for discussing some of the DOI initiatives on climate adaptation and resilience. My question is, the DOI has a huge footprint over the landscape of the US, and the Bureau of Reclamation has a particular role in the flow and utilization of freshwater resources. As you alluded to, much of the Western US is facing a bleak and even more drought-filled future. What opportunities do the DOI and the federal government have to help address the considerable challenges facing residents and ecosystems in the Western US? Thank you.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned in my remarks about the Colorado River Basin, which of course is in the West, it is the first time in history that we actually brought tribes to the table. 30 tribes were at the table to discuss the future of this watershed, and that I feel very proud of that fact. That was the first time that we had all voices at the table. You know, originally it was just the 7 states that had a seat, but I have strongly encouraged, demanded even, that my team make sure that we have all the voices at the table. So I think that with the tribes at the table, that has brought a more robust conversation about the realities of the watershed. I think it's like the worst drought in 1,200 years or something of that nature. It's very devastating. One of the tribes, I believe it's the I can't think of the tribe at the moment. One of the tribes who contributed greatly to the conversations decided that having a project of putting solar panels on their irrigation ditches was a way that they could keep water from evaporating so quickly while also powering the system. So those are the kinds of ideas that came forth when we had tribes sitting at the table with our team. And so I feel very confident that the agreement that they came to with the help of President Biden's Investing in America agenda. We were able to tackle that gigantic problem. Everybody came out of those talks feeling like they had been listened to. And that was really one of the most important things and one of I think, the best thing that could have happened in that whole entire issue. So we're going to keep communicating. I think that's the best way, is to just keep your doors open and make sure that you can talk with people. And I feel confident about the future moving forward. Of course, everything's connected, right? So all of the clean energy projects that we're working on, the conservation projects that we're working on, the 30 by 30 initiative, the America the Beautiful initiative, all of those things we're hoping will have an impact on the climate crisis, and we'll just keep doing it all.
Thank you, Tyler, for the question. Our next esteemed student colleague is Noemi Tejano from LSA.
Marawe, my name is Noemi Tejano. I'm a citizen of the Comanche Nation and a second-year student studying linguistics and Native American studies. I'm especially passionate about the preservation and revitalization of our Indigenous languages. Our languages are vital to our identities and sovereignty as Indigenous people, and knowledge of these languages has historically been restricted and damaged due to generations of genocide and assimilation-era policies. How has the Department of the Interior been working with these tribes to support language revitalization, and how can work on language revitalization be used to support healing within Native communities?
Thank you so much for that question. Dawa'e, I'll say in Karis. And I speak a little bit of Karis. I introduced myself in Karis this evening, but I don't know my language fluently. And one of the reasons why is because my mother was afraid to teach us, because she had been beaten in school when she spoke her native language. My mother, God rest her soul, was a fluent Karis speaker, as was my grandmother. I'm sure some of you have heard of our boarding school initiative. We had a Road to Healing session right here in Michigan a while back. And even though we had 12 different sessions for the Road to Healing, the Road to Healing was the second part of our boarding school initiative. The first part was a report, and then we had the Road to Healing, and then the next part will be another report. Even though they were in different locations around the country, and even though there were all different stories of people who came, survivors and descendants who came to speak publicly about their experiences, the one thread between all of those communities was the loss of language. And people made very clear that their language was not lost, it was stolen. It was stolen from them. And so that is a priority for us. Always fighting for funding, to increase funding for language revitalization. And I want to make clear that it's up to the tribes how they want to revitalize their languages. We are here to support them in however they feel is the best way to revitalize their languages. And the First Lady and I traveled to Oklahoma. We went to the Cherokee Nation there. They have a language immersion school where the school children are learning math, history, English in the Cherokee language. They hadn't quite finished their language center, but they were working on a language center where they will actually bring together fluent speakers with emerging speakers so that they can really make sure that the younger children and the folks who don't speak fluently have the opportunity to learn their language. When you learn your native language, it's everything. It's geography, it's where you were born, where your community is, who your family is. It's just incredibly important, and I want you to know that that is a priority for us. And And thankfully, it's a priority also for the president and Dr. Biden. And so we'll just keep fighting to make sure that we can increase funding so that tribes can make this however they want it to be done.
Thank you, Noemi. There's one more question for you, Secretary Haaland. I'd like to invite Sophie Dodon from the Ford School for the final question.
Hi, Secretary Haaland. Thanks for being here. I'm Sophie, and I'm pursuing a dual degree between the Ford School and the School for the Environment. And my focus is in public lands management, so I'm really curious about your day-to-day reality. On that note, I'm sure that overseeing the vast network of DOI lands is inherently challenging, full of frequent difficult decisions and trade-offs. Given that, I'm curious about what the most common things are that keep you up at night, either because you're super excited about their potential or very torn about the best way to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yeah, sometimes I don't sleep a lot. It's, you know, and sometimes there's just a lot of things to read, right? So it's like being a student all over again. So I hear all of you in this room. So of course, climate change has kept me up at night for a very long time, and it's really difficult. I think the hardest part for me is that young children, children yet to be born, that's the first thing they have to worry about, right? Some of us in this room, I'm a lot older than most of you in this room, we never gave a thought about climate change when we were growing up. We climbed the mesa every day, we played in the river, we did all kinds of things. We didn't worry about climate change, but young children and children yet to be born, that's the first thing they're going to have to worry about as soon as they begin to understand our world. So that to me it's shameful to me to have to feel that way. But I also am very hopeful about some things. Now, recently, recently we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Endangered Species Act. And yes. And some of you might know that there's some folks who think the Endangered Species Act just shouldn't exist anymore, but we love it, and we're gonna follow the law, and we care deeply about the animals that we are protecting because of that. One of the animals that we were able to delist from the Endangered Species Act was a tiny little fish called the snail darter. And when it came off the list, that's all I could talk about. Everyone got tired of me talking about it. Every time a conversation would come up, I would insert snail darter into any conversation because it was exciting to me. It was exciting to think that we had done something right. And I feel, I want more of those things. I want more things that we're doing right. And I think as the American people, right? People who invent things and we started our national parks and we love our animals and we care deeply about our open spaces. We can do things like that. So that keeps me up at night too, because I think that it's exciting to think that you can make a difference in a tiny little fish's life, right? So I'm inherently hopeful. I feel like I'm more of an optimist than I am a pessimist. So I'm going to keep looking to the bright side, keep thinking about the good things that are happening. I was reading earlier today about the solar eclipse that's coming on April 8th. And it's this amazing it's just an amazing natural occurrence, right? It doesn't happen too often. And we can think about that and think how wonderful our world is. And so I know that everyone in this room care. You wouldn't be here listening to me drone on about climate change if you didn't care about the world and making sure that we have something to pass on to future generations. So we can all cry and feel bad about what we've done to this earth. We can also feel proud that we're working to make it better. I'll just say this one last thing. I think one of the worst ecological disasters that we have committed in this country was the plowing up of the Great Plains, right? 60 million buffalo, 60 million American bison were supported by that amazing ecosystem. I can't even fathom 60 million bison existing in this country in that way. It must have been so magnificent, you would just stare at it with awe. And yet, slowly but surely, we have so many committed people across the country. You know, when a farm goes on sale, they buy the farm so they can restore the grassland in that area, right? Little by little, Americans step up to do the right thing. And I know that all of you in this room feel the same way that I do about that. So we'll just keep working hard and keep doing the right thing.
We're honored to have you here, Secretary Haaland. Thank you for everything. We're grateful. And thanks to everybody who attended this important event. We appreciate your presence and your energy. Thank you.